My name is Ginny, also known as 2/3 Lotus, everywhere on the internet. This clip is part of my series, The Poets of Twitch, where I analyze my viewers' writing live on stream. Nothing has been edited out, so you're seeing this exactly as streamed with all of the imperfections and tangents that come with being live. If you want to catch me live or want more information, check out the description. Otherwise, enjoy some excellent writing.
Okay. Let's do poetry. Connection by MsBeccaFae. My mother's face I didn't see. When I experienced her own pain, her own silence, I couldn't imagine how her eyes swelled over 5 states of phone static. I didn't have control. I was scared. I understand, she said. Silence lingers. A ring rises, connects us. The clear telephone wires pull us closer. A shared moment that didn't need more. Does that help? She asked. You don't know how much. Connection by MsBeccaFae. Heavy poem. Some things I like right off the bat, some things that maybe I have like one kind of immediate comment, but that might change with analysis, so I'm not going to give it yet. Ray Mondu 96, welcome. How are you? And I'm going to read this poem again. Connection by MsBeccaFae. My mother's face I didn't see. When I experienced her own pain, her own silence, I couldn't imagine how her eyes swelled over 5 states of phone static. I didn't have control. I was scared. I understand, she said. Silence lingers. A ring rises, connects us. The clear telephone wires pull us closer. A shared moment that didn't need more. Does that help? She asked. You don't know how much. Connection by MsBeccaFae. Damn? Yeah, damn. I agree, Stylish Fail. What are your thoughts on it, other than damn? Anyone else have thoughts right off the bat? My mother's face I didn't see. I experienced her own pain, her own silence. didn't have control. Scared. We've silenced twice. Just drawing lines. I love how precisely she chose what to show in the scenes. Yeah, this is a very precise poem. I mean, there are 6, 9, 12, 15, 22, 28. It's like 35-ish. There's like 50 words in this poem. In general, no wasted words. I think there might be a few words that I find a little unnecessary, but I do think in general, a lot of these words are very quick to say what they need to say. HQ, welcome. My initial thoughts are that I'm missing like 2/3 of the story. Like there's a lot of pain here, but I'm not sure about what. It's probably a me issue. No, that's okay, and that's why we take time to like figure these things out. Because I need things spoon-fed to me sometimes. Well, that's what I do, sort of, on this channel. I like for y'all to participate, but sometimes I just spoon-feed meanings. But maybe we can figure this out. This is a way that I really enjoy approaching poetry, is to say, well, like you said, you're missing 2/3 of the story. There's a lot of pain, but you're not sure about what. So, to put it shortly, the poem leaves you asking the question, what is the pain? What actually happened? And sometimes having a question like this can start to guide us in that direction. Having a question, what happened? And how can we pull from the little context we have, which is fine, a very small amount of context is fun, to figure out and answer this question. We also don't need to answer this question, to be very clear, to understand this poem in particular, because the poem is very clearly more about this. The poem is titled Connection. The poem is about the mother and the daughter and that shared experience and some amount of like helping healing. It isn't about whatever awful event happened, but having some ideas on what happened could give us an idea maybe of the scope or some context on the pain that she is going through, the subject of our poem. This is one where, so I'll talk about that in a second. My interpretation, the author had something bad happen to them, absolutely. My first thought is assault. I think there are reasons in this poem that justify that interpretation, Stylish Fail. She calls her mom, that connection soothes. Yeah, that's kind of the start. They feel connected to slight distance. So I kind of thought I didn't have control. I was scared. It was referring to the way the child hurt her mother. Very true. So this is a great other interpretation. That's interesting. I think we could have lots of different interpretations here, and leaning on y'all for this could be really interesting. My brain goes to like the speaker is experiencing a similar trauma as the mother did before, and that I think is justified in the poem as well. Drowning Devil. I'm gonna break each of these down. Maybe from like jail HQ. That's possible. I think there are reasons to think that. But let's look at the first 3 lines. Because I think if we are to interpret a poem like this that is so sparse, we're going to need to have more kind of investment in each word and really figure out what everything is saying. Because if we have an interpretation that, say, doesn't account for these first 3 stanzas, we are missing like a third of the poem in our interpretation, and that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like a quarter of the poem. And that's a lot of the poem. So one thing that we try to be is like holistic in our interpretation. I would say an interpretation that accounts for more of the poem, for a greater percentage of the poem, is, I mean, it's fundamentally, like the word definitionally, more holistic, more encompassing of the work than something that tries to pull an interpretation out of like 3 lines and really bend the rest of the poem to those lines. And shorter poems just have less poem. If I'm to draw a graph, which I like doing, this is a new graph. We have poem length. It's going to look pretty similar. And we have sort of the attention that we can give per word. And I think this has to just be a fundamental law. The graph looks like this. Maybe it curves. We probably don't get down to negatives. This doesn't look great going to infinity without a curve. Maybe it... No. The longer the poem is, let's say we have like a 1,000 word poem, it's going to take us 10 minutes to read the poem. Maybe not 10 minutes, 8 minutes, I don't know. Speaking time is really interesting with poems. It's hard to approximate. And if we write 10 words, let's say a haiku, every word demands so much more attention. And maybe there's a little like fluidity within the start. Maybe it's a weird graph, but it's always trending down. It's always trending down. It's just a matter of time and how much we can spend. The math of poetry, we do this a lot, Dylan. I love graphs. This is why tech writers are supposed to use brevity. Not always is this directed. Sometimes more is better. No, what did I just do? I just clicked on something. I don't know if I actually like I think I gave you a chat warning. I have the buttons up so I can like ban people. Oh, okay, tech writers. Yeah. Yeah, for technology, you want something to be clear and understandable, so you use... I didn't mean to, Stash Fail, it was a misclick. Use clear, concise language, and that is going to be easier for people to understand because they only really have less words they have to pay attention to. Adjectives, in something technical, is not that helpful. In most cases, like you say. So, I do agree with that. Yeah, everything is math. I like lots of things as math. So, like I said with the haiku, you have like less than 10 words sometimes in a haiku. So, and if we're spending equal time with the poem, then every word is going to get a much greater amount of time. I mean, like, you can even look at the math of this. Let's say it's a 1-word poem, and we spend 1 hour, 60 minutes. It is going to be 60 minutes per word. 2-word poem. Now it's 30 minutes divided between 2 words. 4 words, 15. minutes, which means this is not a straight line graph. 10 words, 6 minutes per word. 100 words, 0.6 minutes, which would be 6/10, 36 seconds, right? 600 word poem, 6 seconds per word. I think that math checks out. So I think when we're analyzing a poem, this just means that we want to, this is a consideration of the poet and is something that is automatically a symptom of analysis. Every poem every word you add to your poem has the potentially to, as like a law, dilute the amount of time someone can spend with that word. Now, the tricky thing is, more words can make people really like your poem and spend way more time with the poem. I don't think writing a one-word poem is going to have people spend much time. There are a few words that could probably be one-word poems. I mean, I think love is a one-word poem, but no one is going to spend that much time thinking about this in a poetic sense. Hi, Ginny and chat. Glad to see someone label their axes. Yeah, I definitely have to in terms of these graphs, because I'm using really odd metrics like length of poem and attention per word as a graph. And welcome in. Do people not? People forget to in math classes, and that's dumb, because they're like, oh, it's in the question, have a question asking about speed versus time. They draw another graph. They just skip labeling their axes. You'll be here for an hour? Well, an hour is better than none, Nico. I'm glad to have you. The standards are falling everywhere. Exactly. Gotta host a writing sprint session at 2. Awesome, Nico. Awesome stuff. So, this just means when we're looking at a poem, this is a 50-word poem, we really want to make sure our interpretation to be holistic is accounting for each of these words, because each word, doing some math, is 2% of the poem, which means if, let's say, 10 words are not in our poem, we are losing 20%, 1/5 of our potential poem. So we want to make sure we include everything. I can make haikus so much faster with that. Written by Jack Spills. Nice little haiku. Oh wait, was Hygiene in chat? I'm so glad to see someone label their axes. Okay, I like when y'all write. That's funny. Okay, both haikus. So now let's look at these first lines and say, what are these saying? My mother's face I didn't see when I experienced her own pain, her own silence. I experienced her own pain. So someone said that this poem seems to be about feeling the same experience of their mother. I think maybe Drowning Devil said that. And yeah, it says basically right here, if we just take the time to pay attention, I experienced her own pain. So sometimes the poet just tells you things. The poem just says this. This happened. I need to get my own React bot. I don't know how that works. I don't even know what that is, really. Her own silence. So here is something that I think is pretty important to the poem. Silence. First of all, silence gets an entire 2 words in this very short poem. And that is like... that's like a lot. Sometimes the poet just tells you things. Jenny 2025. You can clip that. I couldn't imagine. Okay, so there's that. Yes, the poet has told us a thing. Her own pain, her own silence. I experienced it. And whatever this sort of deep trauma is comprised of both pain and silence. Now, someone said, Stylish Fail said, that their thought is that the interpretation would be something like assault for this. And this makes sense. Pain and silence. Silence, kind of not being able to say anything back or resist, and this is something you see with like survivors, is not speaking about what happened to them. Silence. Like this is a very common like description of this thing. So this could be some sort of assault, abuse, something. Anyone else have other ideas for just with like experiencing the pain and silence of my mother? And that's really important too. Her mother. Because this tells me, I think, that this is a pain that is sort of specifically a feminine one. And that also points toward this interpretation as well. Jin reacts to more Bukowski in a YouTube short. The metrics, the algorithm. Yeah, the shorts are good for that. I was gonna, but it's the end of the day and the ADHD is happening and everything has too many steps. I am tipping broken crackers straight into peanut butter jar and the crackers are directly on my lap. And that's how it's been for days now. That's like deeply poetic, HQ. There is something deeply honest and poetic about that paragraph. It's just so... it's so raw. You need to KPI your QRDs. I'm clearly not a content creator enough to... because I don't know what these mean. So, we have some potential interpretations of like her pain and her silence. But I think regardless, it's a specific sort of feminine trauma. One that connects her with her mother that only her mother probably can help her with. I think. It has this impression that like only she could. You don't know how much this helped, even though it's just this moment of understanding silence. You can only get that with a very specific person. My mother's face I didn't see when I experienced her own pain, her own silence. I couldn't imagine how her eyes swelled. This maybe has the meaning that this is so awful to understand and share this experience with this person that it is like how could she possibly then imagine it happening to her mother? This could just speak to the degree of pain. And the fact that all of this is kind of intentionally vague about what actually happened, I really like in this poem. I like for this poem. I think this is actually an example maybe of of a vagueness that, yes, that is going to allow more people to relate to the poem, but I don't think it detracts. Sometimes we see being vague and not deeply and immediately personal actually paradoxically hindering connection of the reader. But what this poem does show is that this is an experience of deep and extraordinary pain, to the point where there's probably only a few things we could fill in, but I think the author is happy to let you fill in yourself. One, because it might be hard to write about if it was a personal experience, which it might not be. I think it generally is, but we do need to be careful about this as analysts, is the difference between the poet and the subject. I talk about this often. And this is something that's really difficult. We'll talk about it in a minute. Key performance indicators on your quick rundowns, gotcha. Still have some left, but thank you. Oh, HQ, based, but go refill your water bottle before consuming additional crackers and peanut butter. That's very true. Good on you, Dew in the Grass. Looking out for the people. Oh yeah, that vagueness is very well done. It really captures a feeling almost everyone had with someone at some point in their life, to be understood and almost wordlessly and feel that love. Yeah, and so maybe this is a term I'll coin, but before we get to this, is a sort of specific vagueness that we might want to pursue in poetry, rather than saying something that relates to everyone just because it's like true. Something like saying, I don't know, I like eating food, or something really vague just because it applies to everyone. I don't think that's super helpful as a poet, because we want something personal. But you also don't have to tell the actual story, like in this poem. I think you can have that, a specific vagueness, where the goal would instead be to not necessarily touch on a specific story. We don't need to tell a story, so long as we can convey a feeling. This is pretty hard, this kind of specific vagueness, because I think so often stories are great at carrying feeling. And that usually happens through detail. When we talk about something like five senses showing, not telling. But it is possible to, in some cases without showing, convey like a lot of emotion. And I don't think this poem wants to show quite what the pain was, and that's fine. I like eating food. It make me very happy. We liked eating food. Beautiful haiku. Actually, I think it's completely silly. So, another thing to think about in a poem like this is separating the poet and the subjects. This I prefer to do, especially when reading an extremely heavy poem, because, well, you might think, oh, this is deeply emotional. This is probably something that comes straight from the heart of the poet. But that's also not always the case. And especially when we're talking about a poem like this, where interpretations might include things like assault or abuse and like deep, connection and relationships with one's mother. It's not always the best to assume that these are true of the poet, rather than just what is being told in the poem. And I find this important just out of respect for your author, especially when you don't know them that well. This is the second poem of MsBeccaFae's I've read on stream. And ever. When I look at something like Bukowski, though, we know that Bukowski speaks from personal experience. He talks about it, he writes a poem called, like, True Story, this is a true story, this happened to me. But that's not the case for everyone. This could be a poem wishing that this is what happened, or just about a situation, trying to empathize with someone deeply. And that doesn't have to be what the author actually thought. So I just try to be careful with, like, the terminology. Have a good one, Nico. Enjoy your day as well, and your writing sprints. So the first 4 stanzas maybe really speak to a deeply painful but vague specificity. Shared with the mother, endured together. And that leaves us with 7 stanzas, right? 7? About how they sort of dealt with this pain after having the experience. And we will talk about these 7, or some of them, after a quick break. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I would encourage you all to not watch this ad and practice some sort of little bit of self-care. Do that. I really like this cardigan. It's like a cape, so big, so warm. Welcome back. I'm Ginny, poet of Twitch. we are reading Connection by MsBeccaFae. My mother's face I didn't see. We're gonna have to come back to that line. My mother's face I didn't see when I experienced her own pain, her own silence. I couldn't imagine how her eyes swelled over 5 states of phone static. I didn't have control. I was scared. I understand, she said. Silence lingers. A ring rises, connects us. The clear telephone wires pull us closer. A shared moment that didn't need more. Does that help? She asked. You don't know how much. Connection by MsBeccaFae. Cardigans are amazing. Only good thing about winter. There's some other things, like wearing warm beanies, but I can wear other beanies in the summer when it's 38 degrees Celsius outside. So, my mother's face I didn't see when I experienced her own pain, her own silence. Stash value say, BeccaFae, if you see this on YouTube, well done. I agree. Now she'll hopefully hear it when I speak it out loud. I didn't see. This is like an interesting line. I think maybe this just connects to I couldn't imagine how her eyes swelled. In just like I think this is a really powerful description of empathy. Feeling for someone so much that you almost can't imagine that pain. Because it would be so, I don't know, destructive to oneself. We think about empathy as walking in someone else's shoes and like understanding the world as they understand it. But if they have felt this degree of pain, then empathy can be understanding it to the point where you can't imagine it being inflicted upon them. Which is pretty powerful. I couldn't imagine how her eyes swelled. How could you? Over 5 states of phone static. And this could also be in the moment. Now they're talking. She's probably crying. She's probably crying. Over 5 states of phone static, just to speak to the distance. And that connection can still occur at a distance. And that's important. Like people are closer than we think they are. Most people are a phone call away. I really like phone calls. I call people kind of just out of the blue and say, what's up? How's it going? Are you busy? Can I talk to you? Can I talk your ear off for a little bit? And I think we're very close to each other through phones and stuff and being able to talk in this way. Over 5 states of phone static, it's such a good way to communicate the distance. Yeah, it's also just like beautiful and poetic. And that's cool. Why? Why is it poetic? If I'm to like turn this into something of a teacher. Well, What is this trying to say? It's kind of like far away, and then maybe there's like a slight, like not, like a lack of clarity, just because of like the static. Unclear, not unclarity. So it's like slightly unclear. But to just say like far away, slightly unclear, these are not very exciting descriptions, but we can say them another way. 5 states, it gives us a lot to think about. I mean, 5 states away, so we're in probably America. I don't know if I guess other places have states, but a lot of places don't have like a ton of states where you can be like 5 states away from someone. and I just think this person's American. It's written in English. Over 5 states of phone static. And I think instead of saying 5 states away, you use the 5 states to describe something else, the phone static. So now the static, the sort of disconnection of distance, the lack of clarity, is informed by like another description over 5 states of phone static. And it tells you like how this conversation is happening. It's just, this gives so much information. It's really impressive, some of these lines, how they say a lot. Now, I think as we get later into the poem, there's some of them that I think are a little less effective than like these first 5 stanzas. I didn't have control. I was scared. I understand. And we know she does. We know she does because of this. And this again just reinforces the pain. It gives us some idea of what it might actually be. Again, any kind of pain that comes from not having control, being scared of something. This we can start to fill in gaps in our own minds. But again, the poem also doesn't necessarily ask us to do that. And that's okay. Silence lingers. This is my favorite part of the poem to read, which maybe makes it my favorite stanza. In the same way that a shorter poem demands more attention to each word, this graph also fits in terms of the length of stanzas. So it's literally like the same graph. Length of stanza and basically care we can give to the word. Very short stanza, we spend more time with it. Very long stanza, we spend less time. Care per word, right? If there's one word and we kind of give that stanza an equal weight, or I think we should do this as well. I think when a poem is arranged in stanzas, especially these, all of equal 2 lines, we want to think about them each as kind of equal. And that means silence lingers. If we give it as sort of as much time reading, I didn't have control. I was scared. I understand, she said. Silence lingers. The clear telephone wires. So if you read it like that, it also kind of literally communicates to the reader, or to the listener and to the reader, what that lingering silence felt like. You just let it linger. And it is the only stanza of just 2 single word lines. Looking at one that I find a little less effective at doing this is When I Experienced. Giving this equality to the stanzas, When I Experienced is kind of a segue from this stanza to the next. And I wonder if this wants to be its own stanza, or if it wants to be, I didn't see my mother's face when I experienced her own pain, her own silence. I read that as if when I was here, and it was experienced her own, and then pain, her own silence on the next line. As opposed to, my mother's face I didn't see when I experienced her own pain, her own silence. It just maybe draws it out more than because we like lingering in the silence, but I think lingering in these sort of transitory words is a little less effective. Hi Caliber, welcome. Lotus. A ring rises, connects us. So, gonna run in 25 minutes, and you're about to as well, Stylish Phil. Well, you two both do. Both do that. Hi, Cal. Are you literally running, or just leaving? Callie, your hat got delayed in Holland. I should get on a plane soon. Cool. So, a ring rises. This just as a description, like a phone ring, I think. I'm not sure there's much of another interpretation here. By size fail. I don't know, does anyone else have other thoughts on the ring? Like a ring rising, we could think of maybe like the sun rising. Right, sunrise. But and that does in a way connect people at a distance, being under the same world, being in the same kind of existence as humans on Earth. But I don't know if it quite makes sense with like the 5 states away. So I'd have to assume this is just like being connected by the phone. But I do think we've already established this, which does make this stanza, like, to me, unless I'm missing something, a little less effective. Does anyone have thoughts on the stanza, feel strongly like it? Have something that they feel I'm missing that makes this stanza of particular value to what the poem is communicating? Silence lingers. The clear telephone wires pull us closer. Silence lingers. A ring rises, connects us. The clear telephone wires pull us closer. I don't know. I just wonder how many times the connection is effective to reiterate. because something that just says, again, we're connected through the phone, maybe dilutes more of like the beautiful silent moment caringness and the pain of the experience when we already have a stanza that really effectively says this. The clear telephone wires pull us closer. I do like this because it does something slightly different than the 5 states of phone static. That describes distance, kind of because of the phone, but this shows the phone bringing that connection closer. And I do think it maybe does it, I think, more poetically than this. This idea, this feeling of being connected to something by a wire, literally pulling it in, it is a tactile aspect to this stanza, which I do think this misses. A shared moment that didn't need more. What's going on? We are analyzing poetry. This was submitted by a viewer under the name of MsBeccaFae. And that's what we do on this channel. We talk about poetry, break it down, analyze it. I, in some cases, give feedback and ideas to improve the poems. And sometimes we also just read and talk. And it's a good time. Welcome in, Space Shuttle 40. So there's this line, a shared moment that didn't need more. The author is not in chat. This author is sometimes in chat, but they mostly see the VODs on YouTube because all of this gets posted on YouTube. But they are someone who has been in chat and is a viewer. High Caliber, who is in chat. We read lots of their poems. And this is kind of the idea. There's a command, ! Submit, that anyone is free, beginning, advanced, intermediate poet of any kind to submit their work. And then I will read it, analyze it, talk about it on stream. And that's for, people in chat, or people who watch on YouTube, or people in the Discord server. Which could be you if you want to. If you're a writer, also no pressure. In the form, MsBeccaFae, you ask, does the poem feel satisfying at the end? I want the poem to be about the connection and the moment with mom and not the pain or silence. Okay, beautiful. I think you've already communicated this, that the poem is much more about the connection than the pain, because of the way the pain is described. And with this, I presume that this silence is slightly different from this silence. They feel different. But this end here, I'm not sure how I feel about it, and maybe people in chat feel slightly differently. A shared moment that didn't need more. I mean, this does tell us what the subject is feeling. There doesn't need to be more, it's just sharing this moment with someone. But this is sort of just saying that. I like the idea. The idea is very powerful, very interesting, very poetic as an idea. I'm not sure the actual writing of it is extraordinarily effective, especially looking at other things you've done in this poem, the very poetic descriptions of the 5 states of phone static, the mother's face, and then this is just a shared moment that didn't need more. It's just telling us that it was that, and that's not entirely compelling to me. My opinion is that this is maybe one of my I think, what I would call one of the weakest stanzas in the poem. Just because it's also saying something that you're kind of already showing. I think we get the impression with the silence over the phone, pulling these two people closer, is this shared moment that is fulfilling. And this last line also does it as well. But to just say it, like sometimes just saying what you mean detracts from what you're trying to say. Which is really brutal. That's the hard thing about poetry. You cannot just say what you mean sometimes. Sometimes it works. And I think this stanza, the second to last one, does a little too much saying what you mean. Whereas, does that help? She asked. That just, which we've already established, is silence. And like nothing. Two little bits of dialogue. Does that help? She asked. And yeah, the answer is yes. Absolutely. But I think this is more powerful without a shared moment that didn't need more. Because when she asked, does that help? Rather than looking to what we are told, we can look to silence helping. We can look to I understand helping. Which are the more real descriptions of the experience, as opposed to a linguistic breaking down of it. A simplification. A shared moment that didn't need more, I feel is so much more of a simplification of the feeling than I understand, lingering silence, and then feeling closer. If that makes sense. So either it's to, in this, describe our shared moment, the subject and the object, in a different way, or just not necessarily describe it at all. Sometimes it's the briefest poems that it's most clear, where there are stanzas that are just kind of weaker because they don't hold the same degree of power and impact as the others. And I find that to be the case with stanza 10. You might disagree, MsBeccaFae. Others might disagree. If someone has told you, like, yeah, this is my favorite stanza, like, I understand that. It makes sense. It is a concise description, but it doesn't add power to the poem. It describes, sort of repetitively, what we've already said in a broad, general, and a sort of not specifically vague way. It has this platitudinous vagueness. It didn't need more, but it does not have much specificity in how it actually feels to you, to the object, to what we think about it. So yeah. Does the poem feel satisfying at the end? Yes. Absolutely it does. Just not all of it. The last stanza, I think, is very satisfying. I think it could be more satisfying with, like, tweaks, in my opinion. I want the poem to be about the connection and moment with my mom and not the pain or the silence. And like I said, in not going into the pain so deeply, leaving the reader to sort of wonder, speculate, with, I think, maybe some degree of accuracy, as to what it might be. it's clearly communicated from you, the poet, that I think this is not the focus. Also, just in the structure, we then move on, leave this behind, and move into the middle and ending sections, which resolve us in connection. You also name the poem Connection. I sort of said at the very start that this title is like not amazing in my opinion, because it's pretty like blunt. It says like, this poem's about connection. Here you go. Connection. But it does make it pretty clear what you want us to pay attention to. And maybe there's some more sort of quote poetic title about being pulled close together by these wires, or whatever. But like, the title is effective to really hammer in the fact that the connection is the important part. And sometimes with a poem like this, where you really want it to not be about the pain, having a clear title like this does help you in that way. So I wouldn't necessarily tell you to change the title. I think there are titles that could communicate connection as the focus without saying connection. But it's not like the most important thing that makes or breaks this poem. Does anyone in chat have questions, comments, thoughts, like the poem, hate the poem, have your own feedback, disagree with me, things that I missed, things you would like me to elaborate on? And High Caliber, you're going on an actual run. Excellent. Actual running is very good for you. No questions, no comments, no feedback. The Stylish Fail earlier said she liked it. I like it. I think this is a beautiful poem. So, Pilsner Grip. You just came and you're already anxious. Drowning Devil. It was nice. Yeah. What about it do you like? This is the danger of saying your thoughts, is I'm going to pry a little bit into there. Anything in particular? Did you have a favorite stanza? My favorite stanza was Silence Lingers. And I think this poem is beautiful in its like description of this connection and the way that it points the reader toward it as opposed to the pain. Like, it's very well done. It's very effective at what it's trying to do. And yeah, there's some tweaks, but like, it's impressive. There's like a technique. There's a technical beauty to this in that as well. Even if it's not verse or whatever. Also, welcome in Pilsner Grip. You're coming in right at the end of this poem. Drowning Devil. Well, then I'm never talking again, lol. But I like the line, her own pain, her own silence. Because, like, I felt that one, even if I'm not a woman. Yeah, I think that line is very powerful to describe her actual experience. So, that's good. Nerdarine and Raiders, welcome. Glad. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, you're someone different. Pilsen Green is different from Pilsner Grip. Oh, you changed your name. Wait, did you change your name? Is it the same person? Nerdarine and Raiders, welcome. No, I'm a woman. Drowning Devil's not a woman. We're reading poetry, y'all. Welcome. I'm Ginny, and we're just finishing up this poem, so we're about to just read it. So if you stay, you at least get to hear a very beautiful poem by a chatter, a viewer named MsBeccaFae, and then we'll be going on to reading some other poetry. That's what we do here analyze, talk about poetry, all things. That's what we do. And Nerdarine, you must rate and run. Absolutely do. Take care of yourself and be well. And again, welcome in, everyone. Let me shout you out. Is there a way I can... No, I can't do it from there. I'm going to stand up and lean toward the camera and look silly to do this. Shout out at Nerdarine. People in my chat, a lot of you already follow Nerdarine because we rate each other a lot. But please do follow Nerdarine if you don't already. I know that it's /shout out. I quit beer, so Pilsner doesn't make sense. And grip took its actual context. I changed it. So you're Pilsen green now. Okay, beautiful. Here's Connection by MsBeccaFae, the analysis that we were just finishing up. Connection. My mother's face I didn't see. When I experienced her own pain, her own silence, I couldn't imagine how her eyes swelled. Over 5 states of phone static. I didn't have control. I was scared. I understand, she said. Silence lingers. A ring rises, connects us. The clear telephone wires pull us closer. A shared moment that didn't need more. Does that help? She asked. You don't know how much. Connection by MsBeccaFae. Really beautiful poem. I thank you so much for submitting this. It's excellent. And I think there's some ways that I think it can be improved, but also that's just my thoughts. Thank you so much. And yeah, be well. I hope you see this on YouTube.
Thank you for watching. I encourage you to check out the rest of the series, follow if you enjoyed, and stop by Twitch if you want to share your own work. See you there.